Killer Karen Reed has attempted to pull off the most transparent innocence fraud of all time. If there is a ray of sunshine to be found within this tragedy, I hope it will be that the playbook has been exposed. People take time to stop, breathe, listen with an open heart and mind, think with their full cognitive abilities, to, if only, consider if what I say is worth a moment of your time to ponder and reflect. If anybody hearing this is unaware of innocence fraud, doesn't understand what it is, that is my goal, to try to begin to educate the public on what this is. It is insidious. The person that I would highly recommend that you listen to, she is on YouTube, Apple. You can watch on YouTube and listen on Apple. I'm sure she's on other audio podcasts, but her name is Roberta Glass, and she's a brilliant woman. She has years of experience looking at these cases. Like many of us, she started down her journey of where she is today, beginning by falling for these innocence fraud campaigns, truly believing somebody to be innocent that was not, truly believing that the PR that was spread about these criminals who are truly guilty, and coming to learn that it was all a lie. So know that going into your journey with understanding innocence fraud, that how those of us who feel extremely strongly about helping people understand what this is, what it looks like, how to navigate it, we feel that strongly and passionately because we came from believing in them. So this is my prologue. And it stemmed from a comment that I left on somebody else's video where somebody asked me, so what? Innocent people are just supposed to sit in prison for the rest of their lives? Of course they are not. No wrongly convicted person should ever rot in prison. You may be surprised to learn that I had to wrongly sit in jail for a couple of months when I was 18. I thought I was in love with a criminal. We were together for over 5 years, and it was toxic. One of those bad boy syndrome things. Many of us have been there. He committed a crime, and he came back to our home afterward, which was in my name. He was arrested, and they arrested me right along with him until they sorted out the details. It took a couple of months, but the courts found the truth. I didn't have to wait years or decades, only a few months, and I didn't need a PR campaign because I had the truth. There is your first sign. These slimy, high-powered, high-priced attorneys who run these fraudulent campaigns hook us by making us believe that there is an egregious social injustice. There is not. Most of the time, there is not. More on that later. But my point is that do your research on the Innocence Project, and not just going to their website and reading what they say about themselves, and not reading PR that they solicit, okay? You need to deep dive. What is the underlying point with the Innocence Project? It is not about innocence at all. They are on the grift. And let me define that term very quickly, because there has been a lot of talk by a lot of true grifters gaslighting their audience, saying, you know, everybody on social media is a grifter then. We're all grifters, and they make jokes about the fact that they're all grifters. That's the newest funny ha-ha for actual grifters. It's just gaslighting 101. Okay? Grifting is not being on social media. It's not creating content and profiting off of that content. It is creating content based on lies and either willful or unwillful ignorance. Most of the time, I would say grifters are willfully ignorant. They pretend to be ignorant. They refuse to discuss certain things. They refuse to have guests on their shows that have contrary viewpoints. They literally live in echo chambers. This is the way society is now. It is terrifying and disgusting to think that so many grown-ass adults want to live in echo chambers. If somebody disagrees with their viewpoint, they attack vile, disgusting, awful, and quite frankly, very unintelligent attacks. It's a very scary state of society. If your content creators that you enjoy don't welcome intellectual disagreement and discussions and breaking things down and trying to understand other people's perspectives, there's your second clue. If they just shut it down, they don't want to answer, they make up an excuse that is clearly a lie, that is so obviously a lie, that has been proven to be a lie, there's a sign. Okay, so that is what grifting is. Intentionally lying to your audience. Because, again, another very terrifying fact and truth about society these days, living in the world of technology, is that we just shut it down. Right? If we don't like it, we shut it off. We shut it down. Or we attack. We don't want to educate ourselves. It's mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling to me. And to think that these are functional adults, a lot of them parents, a lot of them professionals, nurses, a lot of mental health professionals, gaslighting their audience, lying to their audience to make money. And the sad thing is if the people that threw money at them weren't there, they wouldn't do it. A lot of people want to be lied to. They have bought in to a story, and they treat real life like it's a soap opera or a movie. They treat it like it's a football game, like there's winners and losers, and it is disgusting. The Innocence Project is a grift. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't especially young attorneys, naive attorneys, just like we all once were, young and naive, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, pursuing what we thought was going to be the best career, and we were going to make all the change, and it was going to be fantastic. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, because it is, but I'm just saying they go get these jobs thinking that that is what they're doing, but that's not what their bosses are doing. Okay, that's not what they're after. They want money. And innocence fraud is about money. Money, power, politics, fame, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby. They use any ridiculous thing. And they're manipulating. You really need to research all of the facts and data from credible people surrounding new DNA methods and things like that, because if they're testing DNA, let's say this was in a case some of you may recognize, on somebody's shoe, and they don't find on a victim's shoe, right, on the bottom of a victim's shoe, and they don't find the perpetrator that's been convicted and put in prison for said crime, they don't find his DNA on it. So the Innocence Project is claiming, this person their DNA would clearly be on the victim's shoe. These people get out of prison based on ridiculous claims like this, okay? I think many courts are wise to it. Some courts care. There are some defense-friendly judges. I just witnessed it in Massachusetts, where she bent to the will of the defense. It was abhorrent. It was disgusting. It was infuriating. And if there would have been any other judge, another case I followed, for example, was the Koberger case. If Karen Reed would have had Judge Hippler, her ass would be in prison. He wouldn't have allowed any of the shenanigans that Alan Jackson and David Yanetti and Liza Little and Leslie and all the rest of the 846 attorneys and YouTube LawTube grifters that were also an arm of her defense team, which is disgusting, trying to free murderers to get rich off the back of victims. Okay, this is honestly supposed to be informative and less passionate. If you've listened to me before, you know I'm a very passionate person, so I'm going to have to watch that. However, I am going to try to stick to facts and intellect rather than emotion for this one. So they free them based on nonsense. They overturn it. The guilty person walks. They're now in public, in the free world, walking amongst us, working amongst us, potentially teaching our children. A lot of these people are literally hired at colleges. They're murderers working at colleges. And other professors support this. So once the guilty criminal is out of prison, then the grift is in full swing. The slimy attorneys build an army, like we see in Karen Reed with another 754 attorneys being added. An innocent person does not need 742 high-priced attorneys flying in from across the country. They just don't. A public defender, which I used to lovingly refer to as public pretenders. There are some very good public defenders. There are some very bad public defenders, just like any career field. Once they're out, these slimy, already very rich attorneys then turn around and make ridiculous claims of civil rights violations, as if this criminal who got out on some kind of ridiculous technicality had their civil rights violated. But they win. It settles. Civil lawsuits drag on for decades. And so a lot of the times, especially in government, it settles because it's pulling the Band-Aid off, and they know it, and it is all this thing is deep, it's incestuous, it is insidious, and it's another part of the judiciary process at this point. It happens. Millions of dollars, taxpayers. We as taxpayers pay millions of dollars annually in our taxes as a result of our counties, cities, governments having to pay out these innocence fraud settlements. And the criminally dangerous person and all the involved attorneys, the PR, the mainstream media, the social media propagandists, everybody gets rich, which is their motive for the risk, because these attorneys, the attorneys in the Karen Read case, broke federal laws. They broke several federal laws. I'm hoping and praying that Massachusetts has had enough and is working towards some indictments. The problem is the people there are literally brainwashed. I know that jury was tampered with. I know it. Do I have proof? No. I have very, very solid evidence that pretty much is just, yes, it was definitely happened. Now, if the feds get into some signal communications, my bet is they're going to find out that there was a lot of jury tampering. A grand juror just was charged in federal court for leaking confidential grand jury information. And you know what happened with that grand jury information? It went to Free Karen readers who leaked it to the public, who leaked it to these. Basically, when I use the word cult in this instance, I am not exaggerating. They are cult members. They are brainwashed into terrorizing the victim's family, friends, and community. Okay? And literally, the grand juror that was indicted and pled out, her attorney in court said, in defense of her, as if this was an excuse or even some sort of understandable reason, acceptable reason for the egregious breach of trust in the judiciary process. How many victims were created out of this? Anywho, the attorney said to the judge that they did it because they were trying to free Karen Read. Because this grand juror went in to the grand jury with a position on the matter before them. That is a breach of trust that is unacceptable. Is it criminal? I don't know. Probably not. It's pretty hard to prove. But it's pretty freaking obvious most of the time when it does happen. I have never seen anything so egregious as what has went on in this case. Nothing. Delphi came close, but you know what? People, the media is bitching and moaning because no media. And I agreed for a long time until I followed some of the coverage on it and I saw how vastly different these innocence fraudster attorneys were covering it than credible journalistic integrity folks that have YouTube channels but want to give their viewers honest coverage regardless of what their opinion was on the case. I mean, you listen to 10 different people reporting and you get 10 vastly different ideas of what went on in that courtroom. Point being is, that judge took a lot of shit for shutting that shit down like she did. I would give anything for Judge Cannoni to have done what Judge Gull did. I now praise her. My position has done a 180 and 65 times in a row on that. Like, I'm so overjoyed that she did that because that allowed that jury to stay untainted. They didn't listen to the outside noise. It was a circus, but it was not like FKR, not even close. And that jury had integrity. They listened to the facts before them, and they took their jobs seriously. They paid attention to the evidence, and they did their jobs. Again, I went off on a tangent. The dangerous person and all of these people get rich. And the public, all of us are endangered. And I'm always preaching about the youth of our nation. This is what they are being exposed to, is innocence fraud everywhere they turn. So how are they supposed to think any differently? They need to be educated. They need to be prompted to think for themselves. They need to be taught to not parrot anybody, to do their own research. What has happened in our society? And as a result, egregiously the victims, and in this case, yes, plural victims, because Karen Read and her criminal attorneys, who are not, I'm not using criminal as an adjective to describe the type of an attorney they are. I'm saying they are criminals. They conducted themselves with criminal actions. It is in court documents. If you don't believe me, I am trying to put together some videos to go through some of that as well, but it is on public record, okay? They participated in witness intimidation. They participated in many, many, many crimes. More to come on that. But the result of all of this is that murderers are lionized. They're treated like royalty. Do you know? FKR, I hear them talk about the media was so biased against Karen Read. Are you out of your mind? The vast majority of coverage in even mainstream media was pro Karen Read. I have never, ever seen a case, a murder case, go to trial with as much damning evidence. I mean, you want to talk about proving a case, like, I would literally put my life on the line that she is guilty. That is how 159,000% sure I am that that woman murdered John O'Keefe. Okay? And I don't make absolute claims ever. Hardly ever do I do that. It is a rare thing. I have spent 2 years trying to understand the psychology, not trying to understand the case. Once I started watching the trial, it was very clear to me. The first trial, day one, I went into that trial not really knowing much other than I thought maybe she could have been innocent, right? It sounded, I didn't watch a lot of coverage on it. I knew that there was this, social outcry of injustice. So I thought, okay, well, maybe she's innocent. I went into it with an open mind. By the end of opening arguments in trial one, I knew that she was guilty. Now, I didn't know exactly how guilty. I didn't understand the level of depravity of this woman, and I still continued to grant her quite a bit of grace. But she doesn't deserve any grace. Her and her attorneys, among many, 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 many people surrounding this case, victimized John's family, friends, and his entire community. Over and over and over. They're still doing it to this day. They're trying to find some semblance of justice for their loved one in a civil suit at this point, and they are still being terrorized by this antisocial mob of people who refuse to look at objective data and evidence because they were sold a PR campaign for at least a year, if not a little bit more, maybe, I can't remember exactly how, I think it was about a year. They were sold this PR campaign. So by the time trial came around, they were not interested in listening to facts in evidence? Not at all. Everything. It's like I hear something, one thing after another. I'm like, oh, damning. Oh, that's, slam dunk murder too. Like murder too. Sorry. This is not manslaughter like everybody in mainstream media was saying. She didn't do this on purpose. First of all, you don't need intent for murder too. Okay. And second of all, yeah, she knew she hit him. And she left him there for 6 hours, alone and freezing, mere feet away from a warm house and his loving friends. She was the only one in the world that could have helped him. And she drove her selfish, entitled, narcissistic, psychopathic ass to his house and started covering her tracks. This woman is the definition of evil. Again, emotions, trying to keep those out. Okay, moving on. Now, I do realize that corruption is very real and it exists. I do realize that there are bad law enforcement officers, there are bad government officials, there are bad folks in every profession. But I promise you this. If there is a government entity that is wrongly trying to prosecute somebody, first of all, show me a case in which they literally set out to set up show me a case and I will hear you out. Because the amount of risk that the government takes on by knowingly doing something like that is egregious. We'll get into that a little bit. But I promise you this, if they are truly trying to cover up wrongdoing and they have the opportunity to wriggle out of pursuing charges against a wrongfully accused, such as through motions to dismiss, etc., they'll do it in a heartbeat because they can blame it on a technicality and it will simply look like an unintentional travesty to the public. Furthermore, it will save the government millions and prevent exposure of further skeletons that would inevitably be exposed in a civil lawsuit. Up until this past year, I was out there fighting more for people charged who, through countless hours of research and digging, I could not determine why. There are many reasons the general public isn't privy to all the info we need to conclude guilt or innocence before trial. But when we listen to PR and make up our minds based on media rather than court documents and testimony, we get bamboozled. And once we're in a fight we believe to be about social injustice, it's near impossible to not see every new fact we learn in trial through our confirmation bias lens. I used to be very liberal in my views and feelings about the judicial process as well, until I got a bad feeling about someone I had thought was innocent. And I found the education I was seeking because I am always looking for the truth. The truth never changes. I look for the truth even when I don't like it, or I find out I'm wrong. Maybe my ego might take a hit. That doesn't matter to me. My ego isn't involved in my truth-seeking mission. The truth in this case will be revealed in the Karen Read murder of John O'Keefe. Unfortunately, the wheels of justice turn painfully slow. There have been many bad actors involved in the obscene and criminal behavior surrounding the Karen Read Innocence fraud. And legally, this is organized crime. Yes, like the mob. The reason the RICO law was enacted.
August 14th, 1970, the Racketeering Influence and Corruption Organization Act was signed into law as part of the Organized Crime Control Act. This landmark legislation provided prosecutors with tools to combat organized crime, significantly shaping federal criminal law.
This is Scott Reich at Crime Talk. He has YouTube. And if you are looking for a reputable, practicing, successful criminal attorney who will give you straight facts, the straight dope, the straight skinny, plus a little humor, this is your guy. I hope Leah Foley has the stones to hold everyone who participated in these egregious actions accountable for their actions. Something Karen Reed is unable to comprehend. The anti-social mob mentality of the people who crossed obvious boundaries, most of whom knew exactly what they were doing, have made a mockery of the Massachusetts judicial process. And my bet is that there are plenty of powerful people who may very well be as or more enraged than many of us. We, the ones seeking factual justice for John O'Keefe, are often referred to as antis by FKR, because people feel we are anti-Karen Reed. If I'm honest, at this point, I damn well am. But I didn't begin this journey there. Again, I came into the first trial thinking she was likely innocent. But as I said, in my opinion, this was the most transparent innocence fraud of all time. So my mind swiftly changed. After I realized she was very, very guilty, I still granted her grace, far longer than most would if they saw what I saw. But after 2.5 years of watching her continue to victimize and re-victimize her victims, family, friends, and community, and with a smile on her face as she plays the victim, I'm at the point of sheer disgust and disdain. If we're anti-anything, we are anti-corruption. The corruption is on the side of the defense. And unfortunately, the Massachusetts United States Attorney's Office hasn't always been corruption-free. And when Alan Jackson and David Yanetti walked into that office to spew their nonsense, Rachel Rollins and Josh Levy opened a federal investigation into the witnesses based on nothing more than lies and potentially a disproven 227 search on a witness's phone. Now, with the power of the federal government, how long do you think it would have taken for them to get on the horn with Celebrate and determine if that search happened at 227? Nobody can convince me that Josh Levy wasn't actively involved in this fraud. And he has never been held accountable. We are pro-truth and pro-justice, and we're not going anywhere. We will continue to fight for the appropriate actions to be taken to hold those who actively participated in this fraud with their own criminal actions accountable for their actions. We will continue to fight for victims, and we will not rest until there is justice for John O'Keefe. Lastly, The rhetoric of speaking to us like we lost a football game is beyond disgusting. A man lost his life. A family lost a son, a brother, a funkle, which is the adorable term the children referred to Johnny as because he was their father uncle. A cousin and a pure soul. John had many friends. He had lifelong friendships. He was one of those people, if you knew him, you loved him. I wish I had the honor and privilege of knowing him in life. Many people lost someone who sounds to be a friend we should all be so lucky to have once in a lifetime. John is irreplaceable. The void he left is deep, and the community where many of y'all live lost a great police officer. For me, this case has exposed an insidious and toxic snapshot of society, of grown-ass adults acting like not only petulant teenagers, but more like terrorists than citizens. It is terrifying. The world in which we live, there's spiritual warfare. There is a human toll, and it's for keeps. Shame on all of you. Please take time to reflect. Be better. Do better. Love and light. Mwah.